So when the Athenaeum reached out about doing a bike safety event, my first thought was, we have one of those. We did it last weekend. We've been doing it for decades. But one of the things that always, and I've volunteered for that event since moving here, helped organize, and it's a great event. We give away a lot of helmets and fix a lot of bikes. But one of the things that always irked me about it, initially it was always called the Bike Safety Fair, and to me, there was something uncomfortable about sort of saying the answer to bike safety is to give kids helmets. That if they get hit, it's their responsibility to not die. And then we make sure the brakes work and kind of send them on their way. I think there's a lot more that we could do, and the responsibility we have, and so this talk is a little bit background, a little bit personal, and but I'm starting to talk about why it really matters. And I'm a practicing doctor. This is how I got into this. In addition to liking biking, it is a wonderful thing for health. One of the first areas I got involved in was Safe Routes to School. This is sort of a classic background information about what's happening to children's commuting habits. It used to be that the vast majority of kids walked or biked to school, and now it's a small fraction. And even kids that live within a mile of their schools, most of them are driven by a personal vehicle, or the plurality are these days. Whereas it used to be 90% of them would walk or bike. So this has a lot of repercussions on health. So this is what we talk to kids about and parents when they come in to get their child checks. And we want to get all kids an hour a day of exercise. And most kids don't. And so Vermont actually does better than most states, but it's around a third that meet that goal. In this country, it's about 25%, and it gets worse as you get older. And it's worse for girls than boys, at least historically. This is from 2017 from Vermont Department of Health. And so yes, it's about exercise. It's about everything that goes with that. But it's also about performance in school and the concentration and mood. We know that very day that kids walk to school, they will do better on a cognitive test. And they will have less ADHD symptoms, right? So, just that routine makes a big impact on how we see our kids. This is from UCLA. It's so many parts of health are improved from just getting on a bike or walking, but actively commuting, getting around on a day-to-day basis outside of a vehicle. So this is for adults now. This is a little dense, but it's what you're looking at here is basically major causes of death: cardiovascular disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, dementia, depression, and falls. And this is, as you go this way, this is your risk of dying, so you want to be under the line. And these are increased steps during the day as measured from a huge cohort of people with pedometers. And basically, everything gets better. Up until about 8,000, sometimes it kind of levels off around 10,000 steps. That's why they tell you to get 8,000 steps. Falls, I think if you do a whole lot, maybe there's a little bit of going up there, but most of them are sort of a downward trend that's continuous. So you live longer. And there's so much out there now about preventing dementia, and it's just, this is one of the biggest things you can do. So this is always one of my favorite slides. So, we live in America, and in America they want to sell you a solution to all your problems. So, you know, go to a gym. And of course, I kind of like this because I see that this is the eucalyptus tree and the palm tree. I imagine this is Southern California where I grew up. And it's just kind of speaks for itself. But, you know, going to the gym is great. I like going to the gym. But most people, they don't have time for that. So a much more elegant and simple solution is just to walk. So this is for kids. If you live like we do, a mile away from school, and your kids walk to and from school, you will get 2/3 of your recommended daily allowance of exercise every day. If you are an adult, you will get 100% of your recommended aerobic exercise by walking to work if you work a mile away from your home. All you got to do is do a little weightlifting twice a week, and then you're good. You'll be in the top 20% of all adults for actually satisfying the recommendations of exercise. And you don't even really need a gym. This slide's about mortality of children, and so it's always a little bit hard to talk about, but a couple years ago, it's in the news a lot that firearm-related injury became the #1 cause of death in kids 1 to 19 in this country, which is incredibly sad. But you know, motor vehicle crashes have long been the biggest cause of death for children in this country, and they continue to kind of vie for first there. And you know, firearm deaths are incredibly sad. I mean, it's both street violence and suicide. But you don't have to play with guns to live your life in this country, and you have to be around cars almost everywhere. So, I mean, you could just look at the overwhelming numbers versus kind of the things we think about. You know, this is every child that dies of every cancer every year. This is suffocation, is mostly toddlers. Drowning is almost all 1 to 4 years old. This is overdose, the opioid epidemic, every congenital heart disease. I mean, we're talking 4 or 5 times all those causes of death, all the medical causes that we kind of worry a lot about. And this is for adults. So there were about 4,000. There are about 4,000 deaths from motor vehicle crashes in the United States every year for kids. It's about 40,000 for adults. Total. And this is where we compare to the rest of the world, or at least these are a select number of countries. And so you can see Canada and Australia a little above Europe, I think because they were younger like us, more motor-centric, but their death rates are much, much lower. All right. And as many, you know, as much as those 4,000 children and 40,000 adults are kind of heartbreaking, most people, your chances of dying because you don't move enough is actually a lot higher. So if you look here, these are the preventable risk factors for early death. And so these are things you could conceivably change about your lifestyle and how many deaths could be avoided in this country. So they lump all dietary risks. So your highly processed food, your excess salt, your unhealthy fats, all together as the major risk. You'll see other reports show smoking. You'll break that down, and smoking becomes the #1. High blood pressure is undertreated. High body mass index, that is the direct impact of carrying extra weight, separate from whether or not you move or eat healthy. and then there's physical activity. So this is over 200,000 people dying every year early. And so when you look at that, you also notice that a number of these other factors are also impacted by walking and biking, right? Your high blood pressure, your high body mass index, your plasma glucose. This is basically the impact of diabetes. Total cholesterol, yeah, that's pretty much bone density. So all those things get better. The other thing that is relevant is this motor vehicles are the #1 cause of all of particle matter pollution, which has actually a huge impact on health as well. So even more so in Vermont, because we don't have a lot of big factories. All right, so what are the costs? We talked about health. So the first thing we think about with cost is just it's expensive and getting more and more expensive every year. I mean, right now we're all thinking about the cost of gas. Just filled up my Subaru is $75. It's rough. So it's about $12,500 as 2022. I don't know what it is now. The data lags, but I'm sure it's way more than that. It's been going up. And it looks dramatic because it starts at 8 and goes to 12, but still, that's a pretty big increase. And that $12,000 is a big chunk of, we talk a lot about affordability. It's a big chunk of people's income. If you think about if you make, $20 an hour, you're working 3 or 4 months just to pay for your car before you put it towards anything else, housing, food, something for the future. It's a huge burden. So why is that? I think to understand why driving is so expensive, why being dependent on vehicles is so expensive, it's helpful to kind of imagine yourself 100 years in the past. So this is a map from 1919 of the town. It's a pretty basic map, but you can see, you can recognize everything here. The Athenaeum was here, of course. It's been here a long time. The museum was here. A lot of them, big churches were here. So it looked similar. We had, a limited number of roads. We had a water system that was put in the late 1800s. It was actually still private in 1920. I think the town bought it from a private company that Fairbanks started in 1924. So we had water and sewer. But the town was limited to this small area, right? And our population was actually the same or slightly higher than it is now. So it was about 8,000 to 9,000 people versus 7,500 right now. So we had a much physically smaller town with the same number of people, maybe a little bit more. So this is a similar map from the town website today showing the infrastructure that we have. And you just kind of get a sense, this is roads, but it's also your water and sewer lines that extend up, over to St Johnsbury Center, continue up that way, the hospital, out to the kind of the more recent development, up off Farmer Drive and Breeze Hill there. This is just a lot more roads, a lot more pipe, and the same number of people. So when that happens over the course of 100 years, how do you cope with that? There's only really 2 ways. One is you raise taxes, and the other is you have worse service. And I think we see both, right? So, these are not my ideas. This is, this is from a group called Urban 3, and it is through a group called Strong Towns. So if you haven't heard of Strong Towns, I would say go look at their stuff. It really helps make sense of why we're in the situation we are in our sort of municipal budgets, and the way we build our towns and cities. So this is the example they use. This is the city of Lafayette, Louisiana. Lafayette, 100 years ago to now, they're much bigger. They expanded their population by 3, but they expanded their physical blueprint of their infrastructure by 10, right? And so what Urban 3 does, they go in and they map each parcel, and you see when the blue is the parcels that they pay more in property tax than what it costs to serve them. So these are economically productive places. And everything in red is less economic. It's draining actually resources from so they cost more to serve than what the value of the land, the economic value of the property is. And the higher the block, the kind of worse the deficit. And so you see these kind of beautiful suburban houses here are represented in the red. The kind of the strip mall, box store, gas station development with a lot of lanes is out here in the red. And the kind of rundown, not totally occupied downtown in the older area is highly productive. So you're getting a lot more taxes out of this than what you're putting into it. And likewise, the poor neighborhoods, a little more shabby. They don't have these beautiful sidewalks. They don't get repaved as much. The roads are more narrow, a lot more economically productive. So these people living here are subsidizing these people living here. And that's true everywhere in this country, including in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. So our friends that live, in the apartment complex on Main Street or down on Railroad Street are subsidizing people like, places like my neighborhood or up in Farmer Drive. So when I look at our own town, once you kind of see that, you see it everywhere, right? Who knows where this is? Yeah. Yeah, you're coming in on Route 2 into town, right? Here's the crosswalk. There's the school's right here.
There's something with the perspective that's weird, yeah.
Yeah, the school's here. Maple Fields is here. So, two things that I notice is you have a school zone up there. You have a crosswalk, but this tells you if you're right here in a car to drive really fast, right? You have 1, 2, 3, 4 lanes across. What's not there in 1, 2, 3 of these 4 corners is any development. It's any property that's paying any taxes or making money. They're probably paying taxes, but it's underused space. And so we have an overbuilt road, a road that encourages people to speed approaching the school, a road that costs a whole lot of money to build, complete with sidewalks and an island. This is an expensive road.
Oh, there is a sidewalk.
And it's draining the economic potential of this space. Here's another one. You know where this is? There's a hint right here.
Yeah.
It's a Google map. So,
leaving.
Yeah.
Leaving the car in there, yeah.
So this is North Main Street. Here is the current, the hub of the rail trail. Although we want people to go downtown. This is also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lanes wide. I don't know why we'd want people to, accelerate to 50 miles an hour as they approach our town, but that's what this does.
Yeah.
It also makes this, we have, the town has had funding to improve the safety of this intersection. We have a school right here, obviously, at St. J. Academy. But they can't get anybody, it's not enough money to actually do it. They can't get anybody to bid. It's been a problem for the last few years. we don't need this. This would be a better space if you just got rid of half of this 4-lane highway, or this, and went and kept it 2 lanes all the way, like it is, 40 miles down that way. This is, again, a lack of development along this street. And so we have an overly expensive street that's actually taken away from the economic potential of this land. And both those parcels are served by water, they're served by sewer. They cost just as much to service as, the Railroad Street block does, where we're getting, hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax revenue from every year. The state, I understand, plans to resurface this sometime soon, but, how much better would it be just to give this land away to people that want to build a house, and actually have a town over there? So I think one stark example of that, and again, this happens, that happens because the government's giving us money, basically. The government pays to make that street really big and wide, so we have a big wide street, because, I don't know, we got the money. It's jobs. The government also paid for our Portland Street Bridge. You can see this is when they were building it, there was this economic activity happening all along Portland Ave. I think this is still there, but a lot of it was removed because it's inaccessible. It's become blight. It's a place where parents don't feel like their kids should be hanging out, even though it's, this beautiful riverfront area. And that's because we spend millions of dollars to replace that, to build a second bridge. I think what most of us kind of see coming, if you think about it, is that there is no way in hell we're going to be able to replace that bridge. Like, we can't afford it. We don't have the tax base to support that. Similarly, like when you think about Hospital Drive exit, the enormous bridge that was built over the river there's no way we could afford that. The only reason those things got built was from federal money, and that's not gonna last forever. I mean, it might be over now. So, how does this relate to our neighborhoods? So, I'm gonna talk about my own neighborhood. So, this is right down the street. About 15 months ago, my son was hit in this intersection, walking to school in a crosswalk. So, not Lou, his older brother. So if you look at the report at the police station, or the state statistics, it'll say the driver was at fault. There was glare. It was a bright, sunny winter day. There was snow on the ground. Didn't see him. But the fact is that the town has known for years that this is a terribly unsafe intersection. This crosswalk, which right now actually you can't even see because it's worn away, is 84 feet long. Just to get a sense how ridiculous that is, would take at the average speed of walking 37 seconds. And this is not an obscure crossing. It's, in the sort of, if you look at the walking maps of St. J, where you should go for a walk, this is one of the routes. People walk from all over town, walk the loop on Boynton and Green Street every day. And like I said, it takes 37 seconds to cross this at the average speed. We have, he just moved out, but a neighbor that would go walking every day with a with a walker, obviously, it would take him longer than 37 seconds. So the distance that a driver, so the speed limit
It's
on the
30.
street, it's 30.
Oh, I know that.
So the distance that you travel at 30 miles per hour in 37 seconds is almost a third of a mile. So, and this, of course, is where the car is coming from, which is much less than a third of a mile away, coming up Hastings Hill. You know, you have no visibility. There's another crosswalk even closer, which is even more dangerous, perhaps, not quite as long. So rather than sort of just accept the insurance payment and say, you know, that was, you know, the guy was very apologetic, of course. He didn't mean to hit my son. You know, we decided to, you know, try to do something about the intersection. So this, again, is Strong Towns. They have something called the Crash Studio. So rather than sort of just say, hey, it was either the walker or the driver or, you know, this driver or that driver, anytime there's an accident, excuse me, motor vehicle collision, not an accident, you know, they kind of walk you through how to kind of look at it and address what you can actually change. So Luke actually helped me with a project, or did a project. I helped him for his 8th grade capstone. And we kind of went through some of the steps. Here's him measuring. This is why I know there's 84 feet. This is the other, so this is if you're coming on the other side of the main street and you want to get over. Of course, there's no crosswalk there, but that's how people get to places. You remember how long that one was? It was like 100 feet wide.
Yeah.
And we have our speed gun. So,
You have my statistics.
yeah, I didn't have his statistics because he did it in the school system, and I didn't have access to it. But anyone can guess what the average speed is in the morning commute time?
When all the kids are going to school.
Yeah. It's not. It's 38 miles an hour. So,
It should be 25.
yeah. So 38 miles doesn't sound crazy, like a 38 and a 30. I mean, if I'm on the highway, I certainly might go 73 and that's 65. But I think it's, you know, obviously it's different when you're in somewhere where there's humans around. And this is why, if you hit somebody going 20 miles per hour, they're probably going to live. And I think the gentleman was driving about 25 miles per hour that hit my son. Fortunately, he's super tall. He kind of went like a moose into the windshield. And hit his shoulder, not his head. So he broke his humerus, but that was the worst of it. But, you know, if you hit somebody without slowing down 40 miles per hour, you're probably going to kill them. And if you drive to the speed limit, there's close to a 50-50 chance. I mean, if that was a full-size truck that hit my son, he could be dead right now.
I've heard it's hard in these Vermont towns to get down to 25.
The state will not let you in a state highway.
Because that's a state, that's 5.
I think it's an alternative to 5. So, and so every time I drive through Marshfield and Plainfield, I just think, holy crap.
I drive 25, I just make everybody do it.
Yeah, no, me too.
If I'm, it should be.
It should be 20. Look,
Yeah.
it should be 20. We should be 20 anywhere where you're in a village. And, you know, it is a lot of places in the country, right?
In the village, it's 20. Yeah.
In the world, sorry, not in the country, not in the United States.
Yeah.
Not in the United States. But,
A lot of the 25 is the one slogan. But
okay, yeah, yeah. And so here, this actually, from Local Motion, gave us some options. So about what we hope to do, some options for what we could possibly do with this intersection. And so this one involves an island. This is closing this off, which, you know, my neighbors are okay with. it doesn't really serve, the reason why it's 84 feet is because there's two streets. This one, and this one's coming from here, and this one's coming from here, and then they kind of randomly cross. And it's just, they just kind of left the whole thing open. If you look at, you can tell like during the winter when there's, after it snows, that hardly anybody actually goes this way anyways. If you look at kind of tire tracks. Here's another option where you kind of you narrow this whole intersection, this one too, and then you would kind of go, I think that this walkway is on this side, so I think it would be a challenge to get people to diagonal it, but those are certainly improvements. As part of that process that Luke and I did, they send you up to this kind of street mix website. So if you are looking at your own neighborhood and you want to sort of imagine it a little different, you might want to, borrow the little measurer and go out and see how wide your street is, and then get some data about how fast people drive, and then think about what you could do with that space that might be a little safer. So the sort of straightaways on Main Street are 48 feet wide with 2 lanes, which is kind of crazy. So right now, all we have in that space is a parking lane and two-way driving lanes. But we could have many other things, including a protected bike lane. There's plenty of space.
So that is your width.
This actually is not. This is just an example.
Just an example. Yeah,
But we did it. If Luke had his presentation, actually, some options for Main Street.
It's an unusually wide street.
It is very wide.
Out west, because they say you could turn a carriage
Well,
straight.
yeah, it's been. I mean, it's sort of like the showpiece. They kind of had these big houses built, and they moved the little ones over to Green Street, and then they kind of had them all set back, and you can't park in your front yard in front of your house on Main Street, which is fine. But I mean, it's nice. There are nice walkways. It's super expensive to have a showpiece. I mean, for your, because you're serving that, having an acre lot downtown is excessively expensive for the town.
So they pay property tax.
Sure, but I mean, you could put 10 houses on that same acre and get a lot more property tax. And when you start kind of seeing things that way, you look around and you think, this is Clinton Ave. You guys know Clinton? It's the one that comes off here. We're at, and it kind of loops and it goes to Main Street. And it's sort of, you can see how narrow this street is. It's not even wide enough to have 2 lanes. They just put this there. It has no sidewalks. A very cheap street to build and to resurface and to plow and to salt, but a number of really cute, densely developed houses along that street. So this is an incredibly productive residential street. And then you go 1 block over, it's like a half a block, and Summer Street. Summer Street is a nice street, like, don't get me wrong. And a few years ago, they got beautiful new sidewalks and granite curbs, but this is not a street where you would have your kid play basketball in the street. It's not a street where you have your kid ride their bike in the street. Whereas if you lived here, you probably would do either, because you can't possibly drive that fast on this street. So we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars more to make this street look like this, so that people have a less safe and less pleasant street to live on. So when we think about kind of going back to this, like, oh, that's really expensive, putting sidewalks in and bump outs and bike lanes, that's really expensive. But it doesn't have to be that, it could be this. And we'd all be paying less taxes. So I think, when I think about this, I look around town and think about, well, could we get by with getting rid of that street or making this street smaller? And I think more of us, hopefully, will start thinking about that and showing up and asking for it. I don't, there are a number of programs to get funding, some of them are active right now, to do these kind of bike and walk safety work. It's hard to get enough money to do a big project, but it's out there. But I think that, every time that we do a new street project, I think sort of questioning what we're doing, I think makes a lot of sense. I know we just did Pleasant Street. I don't know, you guys know Pleasant Street? It's the one that goes up, on the other side of the river. You cross Concord and you go left, you kind of go the back way of the hospital. They just redid that, new sidewalks, it's great, but they widened it by 2 feet. And I think just because, I don't know, if they had the money. But people drive faster. It used to have also potholes, which, I don't love when I'm driving, but every day I ride my bike or run to work. Every day that I work at the hospital. And you see people burning up that thing. So it's, sometimes I get, when you start looking at this and see it, you get frustrated, but I think it's going to be the economic reality that sort of changes this. These very, that map from 1920 that was dense, it was walkable, it was people living environmentally sustainably. That was before Act 250 or Act 181 or anything like that. We don't necessarily need to make it more expensive for people to build out in the country. I think what we need is to stop subsidizing, making things that make life more dangerous and harder for people that do live here. And so I think the economic reality of the tax system and the sort of diminishing investments from the federal government will kind of force us in that direction. But I hope we sort of take steps to kind of make that transition less painful, and kind of get to the finish line a little sooner. So that's why I'm here talking. Okay.